The slave market smelled like oil, sweat, and old blood. Rusted cages lined both sides of the alley, each holding someone broken, forgotten, or too weak to fight. The sky above the alien city was dark orange, filled with smoke and the sounds of traders shouting prices. Grant, a human mechanic from Earth, walked past the cages. His boots crunched on the dry gravel. He didn't come to buy a slave. He only needed spare parts for his ship's engine, but something made him stop. A small whisper, barely heard, drifted from one of the cages. "Are you going to sell me like Papa did?" He turned slowly, thinking he misheard. But there she was, a tiny alien girl, no older than 6. Her skin was a soft silver color, and her hair was tangled and dull. Her big violet eyes stared straight at him without fear, but also without hope. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She just waited like someone used to being thrown away. The collar around her neck blinked weakly, a sign it was failing. The bars of her cage were bent, as if someone had tried to escape before. Grant felt something strange in his chest, a memory, a pain. The vendor noticed him stopping and rushed over, a wide grin on his face. "She's a defect," he said. "Won't talk, won't eat much, useless for labor. I'll give her to you for half the price of a scrapbot." Grant didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the girl. She was curled up in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her voice still echoed in his mind. "Are you going to sell me like Papa did?" He remembered his own daughter's voice, long gone now, taken by war. Her laughter, her tiny arms around his neck. "She's got no name, just a number," the vendor added, tapping the collar. "Didn't even cry when her father signed the papers. Cold little thing, maybe broken in the head. Want her or not?" The girl slowly stood up in the cage, not to run, not to plead. She just looked at him and said softly, "Don't lie to me, if you're going to sell me later. Just say it now." Grant's jaw tightened. He had seen machines fall apart, ships explode, wires melt under pressure. But nothing hit him harder than that voice. He stepped closer, knelt down, and asked, "What's your name, kid?" The girl looked down at her feet. He said, "Names are for daughters. I'm not a daughter, I'm a thing." That was it. The moment everything inside him broke, the moment the past and present smashed together, he stood up, pulled out his tool pouch, and said, "I'll take her." "Good choice," the vendor laughed, unlocking the cage. "No refunds though, you damage her, she's yours for life." As the cage creaked open, the girl didn't move. She stared at Grant like she was trying to see if he was real. He reached out a hand, slowly, not to grab her, just to offer. She didn't take it. But she stepped out, barefoot on the hot gravel. She didn't smile, didn't speak again, just walked beside him, silently. People stared as he left the market with her. Some laughed, some shook their heads. A human buying a defective alien girl wasn't normal. But Grant didn't care. Back at his ship, he opened the ramp and waited for her to step in. She paused, looking back at the market. Then at him. "If I fall asleep," she asked quietly, "will I wake up in a different cage again?" "No," he said, voice low and firm. "You'll wake up right where you belong." She nodded once, stepped inside, and for the first time, her small hand reached out and held the edge of his coat. Not to pull him, not to hold on tightly, just to feel if he was real. And Grant, the man who had lost everything, suddenly realized maybe he just found the one thing that could save them both. The rusted cage was behind them now. But the story was only beginning. Let me know when you're ready for part 2. She doesn't even know what warm food is, and I'll write the next 700 words without any full stops too. The workshop was silent, except for the low hum of machines and the clinking of metal tools scattered across the table. Grant stood by the stove, heating a simple meal: reheated synth meat, bread, and warm broth. He looked over his shoulder and saw the tiny alien girl sitting on the edge of a crate, legs pulled to her chest, her big violet eyes scanning everything like it might bite her. He placed the plate on the workbench near her. "Here, food," he said gently. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at the plate like it was a trap. Grant crouched down beside her. "It's safe," he whispered. "You don't have to eat if you don't want to." Slowly, she leaned forward, sniffing the air like a stray animal. Her small hand reached out, touched the bread, then pulled back quickly. She whispered, "It's warm," like it was a strange thing. Grant's heart twisted. Yeah, warm is good. She took a tiny bite, her lips trembling, her eyes filled with surprise and confusion. She chewed slowly, like she was trying to remember how. After a few bites, she looked at him and said softly, "Thank you." That one word hit Grant harder than any punch. He looked away, blinking fast. "You're welcome," he said, pretending to fix a loose bolt nearby. Later that night, he made her a small sleeping corner under the workbench with a pillow and a blanket. But when he turned around, she was already curled up on the cold floor. "Shivering hay," he said softly. "The blanket is for you." She shook her head. "Papa said I don't need it." Grant crouched again, gently picked her up and placed her on the blanket. She didn't resist. But her tiny body was stiff, tense, ready to run. "You're safe here," he said. "I don't hit kids. I don't sell them either." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "You're not going to sell me tomorrow." He froze, then slowly knelt beside her. "No, never," he said firmly. "You stay here as long as you want." She finally relaxed a little, pulling the blanket over her shoulder. Grant turned off the light and went back to his tools, trying to pretend everything was normal, but his hands were shaking the next morning. He woke up early to the sound of metal crashing. He rushed to the front door and saw her standing there, holding a wrench that was way too big for her. "I wanted to help," she said quietly. "I used to help Papa." Grant smiled despite the mess. "Then let's start small." He gave her a small job passing tools while he worked on a busted engine. She was careful, quiet, and fast, like she had done this 1,000 times before, but she flinched every time he raised his hand, even just to wipe his sweat. That's when he realized she didn't trust kindness. Not yet, as the sun started to set over the metal scrapyard. They sat side by side on an overturned crate, eating dinner together for a moment. It felt like a strange kind of peace, until the silence broke with a loud knock on the metal door. Grant stood up slowly, told her to hide under the bench. She obeyed instantly, without a word. He opened the door and saw 3 men in long coats, bounty hunter style. "We're here for the girl," one said, holding out a data chip. "She's stolen property." Grant's jaw tightened. "She's not property. She's a child. Not according to this." The second man grinned, showing a registry number. "You've got 20 minutes to give her up, or we'll come back with force." They turned and walked away, leaving dust in their wake. Grant shut the door, locked every bolt, and sat down on the bench. The girl crawled out slowly, her eyes full of fear. "They'll take me," she whispered. "They always come back." He looked at her and said the words he never thought he'd say again. "Not this time." Then he reached for his old plasma rifle. Still dusty, still loaded, because he wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was her protector now, whether he was ready or not. Grant waited until the dark, cold night had fully wrapped around the scrapyard before moving. The girl was asleep under the bench again, small and quiet like a kitten hiding from dogs. He crouched beside her and gently touched her shoulder. "Wake up, little one," he whispered. "I need to check something." She blinked slowly, her eyes heavy with sleep. "Did they come back?" she asked in a broken voice. Grant shook his head. "No, not yet," he said. "But I think they will. I just need to see something first. I promise I won't hurt you." Her eyes filled with fear as he reached toward her back. She hesitated, but finally nodded and turned around. Slowly, he lifted the back of her worn shirt, and what he saw made his heart feel like it had stopped beating. Long faded lines, some newer than others, marked her thin back like twisted ropes of pain. Burn scars, some small like wire tips. Others long and cruel. Some were purple, others a sick, pale pink. It wasn't just one time. She had been hurt over and over again. Grant's hands trembled. He lowered the shirt and sat beside her on the floor. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Why would someone do this to a child? He whispered more to himself than to her. She hugged her knees because I was bad. Papa said I was cursed. He said I brought bad luck. That's why he traded me. Grant clenched his fists. You weren't bad. They were, he said. You're not cursed. You're a child. The girl looked at him, eyes full of confusion. Then why did everyone leave me? He couldn't answer, because deep inside he remembered how he had once done the same. Left his own daughter for the battlefield. She never saw him come back. The memory haunted him every night that night. He gave her his own bed. She tried to sleep on the floor again, but he gently placed her on the mattress, tucked her in, and sat by the door with his plasma rifle across his lap, watching, guarding around midnight. She began to cry in her sleep, tossing and whispering things he couldn't understand, words in a language he didn't know. Then suddenly she screamed, "Don't lock the cage, please," and sat up, shaking. Grant rushed over and held her close. It's all right. It was just a dream. No cage. Not here. Not ever. She buried her face into his chest, breathing fast like a hunted animal. He didn't say much, just kept his arms around her until she stopped trembling the next morning. Grant did something he hadn't done in years. He turned on his old med scanner. He waved it gently over her body, hoping to check for infections or hidden wounds. But what he found wasn't just physical. A faint signal blinked red on the screen, hidden deep under her skin near her spine. A tracking chip. His blood ran cold. They tagged you, he said. They're tracking you. She nodded slowly. Papa said it was so he could always find me if I ran away. Grant stared at the scanner. The chip was old tech, illegal, military grade. It shouldn't even exist anymore, and the code registered to a royal house emblem, one used only by noble bloodlines. He sat down hard, his mind spinning. This wasn't just a lost alien girl. She was someone important. Someone powerful people might want back. He looked at her again. She was playing with a broken circuit, unaware of what he'd just discovered. Grant took a deep breath. Do you trust me? He asked. She looked up, then nodded. Good. I need to remove that chip. She didn't ask questions, just climbed up onto the table and laid on her stomach. He sterilized his tools, wiped his hands, and said, It's going to hurt a little, but only for a second. After that, they won't find you again. She closed her eyes and whispered. Okay. It took 2 long minutes, sweat dripping from his brow as he worked. Finally, he pulled out the tiny blinking device and crushed it under his boot. It's done, he said. The girl smiled for the first time. A real smile, but as the signal died, somewhere far across space, a screen lit up. A red icon flashed in a dark room filled with alien officers. One of them leaned forward and said, We found her. Prepare the ship, back in the junkyard. Grant had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing: he would never let her be taken again. The crushed implant lay in pieces under Grant's boot, tiny metal shards catching the workshop light. Grant stared at it for a moment longer. Feeling the weight of what he had just done, he didn't just remove a tracker, he had declared war without even knowing who the enemy was. The little girl sat on the edge of the table, gently touching the bandage on her back. It doesn't burn anymore, she said quietly. Grant looked at her and smiled. That's because it's gone. No more beeping, no more tracking. She tilted her head. Then why do you look scared? He crouched in front of her and sighed. Because whoever put that chip in you might come looking for you now. She didn't speak, but her small fingers gripped the edge of the bench tighter. Grant knew he needed answers. The implant had markings on its circuit, a royal seal. He had seen it once during a repair job for a diplomat's transport ship. It belonged to the Arventar High House, one of the most powerful bloodlines in this star system. Why would a royal tag a child like that? Why was she being sold in a slave market like trash? None of it made sense. Grant activated his old signal jammer, a rusted device barely holding together, but still good enough to scramble scans within a mile radius. He surrounded the girl with every shielded panel he had, creating a makeshift protection cage inside the workshop, but he knew it wouldn't last later that evening. As the girl fell asleep, curled up beside his workbench, Grant sent out an encrypted message using a private channel. He contacted someone he hadn't spoken to in years, Elias Wren, a former intelligence officer turned scrap dealer on the outer moons. The message was short. Need help? Arventar tag found in a child's spine? Send info. Keep quiet. He leaned back in his chair, watching the child sleep. Her face was peaceful for once. The tension gone for a few hours, but Grant couldn't rest. Not now, 3 hours later. A reply blinked on his comms pad. Elias had sent a file. Encrypted and labeled urgent. Grant opened it and froze. The file showed pictures of a royal family, an alien queen with sharp eyes and a proud face. Beside her was a small girl with violet eyes and silver markings on her cheeks. It was her, the girl in his workshop. Princess Varelia of the Arventar line declared missing 6 months ago after a political coup. The queen had been overthrown by her own brother, and the child vanished during the chaos. They had assumed she was killed, but she had been sold. Like scrap, Grant shut the file and looked at her again. She stirred in her sleep. Whispering in a language he didn't understand, he whispered back, "You're royalty, and you don't even know it." The next morning, the sun barely peeked through the clouds when he heard a strange sound above, a hum, low and deep. He rushed outside and looked up. A black ship, sleek and quiet, hovered just above the scrapyard. His heart dropped. They found her. He ran inside, grabbed the girl in his arms, and rushed to the underground storage pit. It was built to hide illegal tech. Now it would hide something far more precious. He lowered her into the dark space, covered the opening with a false floor, and whispered, "Stay quiet. No matter what you hear, I'll come get you." She grabbed his hand, trembling. "Will they hurt you too?" He smiled sadly. "They can try." The door to the workshop burst open moments later. Armored figures stepped in, weapons drawn. But they didn't shoot. One of them stepped forward and said, "We're here for the girl. By royal order." Grant narrowed his eyes. Whose royal order? Her mother or her uncle? The soldier froze. "You're not here to help her," Grant said. "You're here to silence her." The soldier raised his weapon. But Grant was faster. His plasma rifle hummed, aimed directly at the leader's chest. "Touch anything, and you won't leave this place breathing." He growled. The soldiers hesitated, unsure. Outside, the black ship began to descend inside. Under the floor, the girl pressed her hands over her ears, trying not to cry. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the ones who wanted to take her or the man who was willing to fight an army to keep her safe. She had never been protected before, and she had never seen someone cry for her the way he had until now. Smoke still floated in the air from the plasma burst. The workshop lights flickered as Grant stood his ground, rifle aimed steady. His hands were firm, but his heart pounded hard inside his chest. He had faced machines, firestorms, even death in the past. But this moment felt different. Because this time, he wasn't protecting gear or cargo. He was protecting her. The lead soldier didn't fire. He lowered his weapon slowly and raised his free hand. "We don't want to fight," he said. "We didn't know she was with a human civilian." Grant didn't blink. "You're here with a black ship, armed like assassins." Another soldier stepped forward. This one, different. No weapon, just heavy armor with gold lines. He removed his helmet and revealed a deep scar across his alien brow. His voice was calm, respectful. "I am Commander Vesk. We've come for Princess Varelia." At the name, Grant's rifle dipped slightly. "You admit she's a princess," he said. "Then why was she in a cage like an animal?" Vesk looked down with shame because her uncle did not want her found. The royal line was supposed to be wiped clean. But her mother, the queen, sent a coded distress beacon just before she vanished. "We followed weak signals for months." Grant didn't trust him yet, so why now? We picked up the final pulse from the tracker. Vesk replied, "It led us here." Grant motioned toward the girl's hiding place with his eyes. "She doesn't trust anyone. She doesn't have to," Vesk said. Then did something unexpected. He dropped to one knee, the other soldiers froze. Stunned, Vesk placed his right fist over his heart and bowed his head. "Princess Varelia, if you hear me, I vow upon my soul, no one will harm you again." There was silence. Then the sound of tiny footsteps across metal. The false floor creaked open slowly. The little girl peeked out, her violet eyes wide, lips trembling. Grant turned to her and gave a small nod. "It's okay. I'm right here." She stepped forward, barefoot and shaking. Her gaze fell on the kneeling soldier. "Why did you kneel?" she asked softly. "Because you are royalty," Vesk replied without looking up. "And I failed you." She looked at Grant. "Is he telling the truth?" Grant nodded slowly. "He might be." She walked closer to Vesk, her voice barely a whisper. "Then, where is my mother?" Vesk's face hardened. "She disappeared when the palace fell. We believe she was taken, or worse." The girl looked down, her tiny fingers clenched. "I don't want to go back." "You don't have to," Vesk said, standing now. "We only came to protect you. Not to drag you back to a throne," one of the other soldiers whispered. But the council, Vesk cut him off with a glance. "The council will listen to her will. It is law." Grant crossed his arms, still tense. "What happens if they don't?" Vesk met his eyes. "Then they'll have to go through us." The little girl looked between them, then reached up and took Grant's hand. "Can I stay with him?" she asked Vesk. "You may choose," Vesk said. "And if this human is your choice, then so be it." Grant knelt beside her. "You don't have to decide now," but she nodded firmly. "I already did." Vesk stepped back, then handed Grant a sealed data crystal. Inside is her true name, her birth records, and a beacon code that will bring us, if ever needed. Grant took it and nodded. "Thanks." Also, Vesk added, "Your name will be recorded in royal history as the man who protected the last heir when no one else would." Grant didn't want fame, didn't want attention. He only wanted her to be safe after the soldiers left. The black ship rose into the sky and vanished into the clouds. Back inside the workshop, the girl sat on the crate eating warm food again, smiling softly. "You okay?" Grant asked. She nodded. "No more cages, right?" "No more," he promised, "even if I'm a princess." She asked, chewing slowly. He smiled. "Even if you're the queen of the galaxy?" And outside, the stars kept moving. Not knowing, a child's heart had finally stopped running, and a human had become her home. 3 days after the soldiers left, Grant received a coded message through the crystal chip they had given him. It was short, urgent, and direct. The Royal Council had requested a formal meeting with Princess Varelia to decide her future. They claimed it was her right to speak and choose her path, but Grant knew better. The royal court never called unless they wanted control again. He looked at her as she helped organize tools in the workshop. Covered in dust and grease, smiling softly to herself, she looked like any normal child. Not a royal heir, not a symbol of rebellion. He read the message out loud to her and asked, "Do you want to go?" She didn't answer right away. She set the tools down slowly and looked up. "Will you come with me?" Every step, he promised without hesitation. The next day, a sleek silver shuttle arrived, escorted by royal guards dressed in white and gold. They didn't touch her, didn't command her, only opened the door and bowed low. Varelia held Grant's hand tightly as they entered. Her grip didn't loosen. Even when they reached the shining palace floating above the clouds, the council chamber was massive. Walls of crystal, marble floors, and ancient symbols on the ceiling. Dozens of alien leaders sat in curved seats, watching her every move like judges watching prey. An elder stood and spoke. "We call upon Princess Varelia, last child of Queen Aresha, to declare her will." She stepped forward, but didn't let go of Grant's hand. "Do I have to wear a crown to speak?" she asked. Some council members laughed softly, others whispered, but one nodded. "You do not." Your voice is your right. She looked around the room, then back at Grant. She stepped forward on her own this time. Shoulders straight, chin up. I don't want a throne, she said, her voice small but steady. I don't want servants, guards, or golden rooms. I want freedom. I want food that's warm, a bed that's soft, and someone who looks at me like I matter. Silence filled the room. I found that, she added, pointing at Grant. With him, one of the council members stood, shocked. You would give up royalty to live in a junkyard with a human. She looked directly at him. He cried when I was scared. He protected me when others tried to take me. He gave me blankets when I shivered and stayed awake when I had nightmares. No palace ever did that. Another elder stood. But your blood, your legacy, means nothing if I'm in chains again. She interrupted. Gasps echoed across the room. The oldest member of the council, a woman with silver eyes and deep lines on her face, raised her hand for silence. The law is clear, she said calmly. The heir may choose her path, and no one may override it. The other members fell quiet. Varelia turned back toward Grant, who was still standing quietly near the door. Unsure if he was supposed to say something, she walked over, took his hand again, and whispered, "Can we go home now?" He smiled. "Yeah, let's go home." As they turned to leave, the silver-eyed elder stood once more. "Let the record show," she declared, "that Princess Varelia of the Arventar line chose a human protector over a throne, and by doing so, reminded this council of what leadership truly means." The doors opened, and no one stopped them. Not even the ones who had once demanded she return back on the shuttle. She leaned her head on Grant's shoulder and asked, "Do you think my mother would be proud?" He looked out the window, his voice soft. "I think she'd be proud you found your voice, even after everything." When they returned to the scrapyard, it was no longer just metal and rust. Something had changed. A sense of peace lingered in the air, like even the wind respected her now. She hung a new sign over the door. Written in shaky letters, "No cages, no kings, only kindness." Grant laughed when he saw it. "That's the rule now." She nodded. "It's the only rule I ever want." And for the first time since she had been sold, chased and hidden, she felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was choosing. And the galaxy, watching from afar, began whispering about the girl who turned her back on a crown, and the human who gave her the strength to do it. The wind howled gently across the scrapyard as the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the metal ruins inside the workshop. Warmth flowed from a small heater while the smell of cooked food filled the air. Grant stirred a pot of stew, humming quietly to himself. On the other side of the room, Varelia giggled as she struggled to fix a broken hover fan, her hands covered in grease. "You're missing the red wire," Grant called out without turning. She rolled her eyes and stuck out her tongue. "I know, I was just testing you." She had grown. Not in size, but in spirit. Her eyes were brighter now, not afraid. Her voice no longer trembled when she spoke. She still flinched sometimes, still curled into a ball when thunder rumbled through the yard. But she no longer hid under tables or cried in her sleep. Grant set 2 bowls on the table. "Dinner's ready, my Canic princess." She ran over, her arms wide, and hugged him tight before climbing into her seat. "You make better food than palace chefs," she declared. He laughed. "You've never had palace food." "Exactly," she said with a grin. "That's why I know this is better." Later that night, she found an old wooden box tucked under a shelf. Inside was a faded photo of a girl with freckles and dark hair, smiling in front of a broken ship. Varelia picked it up carefully and brought it to Grant. "Who's this?" He sat down slowly, taking the photos in his hands. His eyes grew distant. "That's my daughter Lila." Varelia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Where is she?" Grant stared at the photo for a long moment. Gone, during the border war. She never got to see peace. Never got to grow up. Varelia sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'm not her," she said softly. "But maybe I can be your daughter too." Grant didn't speak for several seconds. Then he placed the photo back in the box, closed it, and pulled her into a hug. "You already are," he whispered. "You always were. From the moment you asked me if I was going to sell you," she smiled. But tears shimmered in her eyes the next morning. A royal messenger arrived on foot. Unarmed, humble, he handed Grant a sealed envelope. A gift from the council, no demands, no summons, just thanks. Inside the envelope was a certificate naming Varelia as free by royal law, protected by decree, and a small crystal pendant with her mother's name etched in ancient script. Varelia held the pendant tight in her hand. "I remember this. She used to wear it around her neck when she told me stories." Grant placed the chain around her neck. "She'd want you to wear it now." From that day on, the workshop became something else, not just a shelter. Not just a place for junk and spare parts, but a home. Kids from the nearby camps came to learn how to fix things. Strangers knocked just to share food or stories, and every so often, a soldier or council member visited. Not to control, but to listen. The door had a new plate now, not made of gold, just old metal polished clean. It read, "Home of Varelia and Grant. No buying, no selling, only protecting one night after the stars had come out." She asked him, "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" He looked at her, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "You're not normal, Varelia. You're extraordinary." She leaned back in her chair, the night air soft and cool. "Do you think others like me are still out there? Scared? Alone?" He nodded slowly. "I do, and maybe one day we'll help them too." She stood up, walked to the door, and looked at the stars. "Then I want to be like you," she said. "Someone who never gives up, even when they're hurting inside." Grant stood beside her, his voice low. "We both hurt, kid, but we keep going. Because the galaxy needs people who don't give up." She reached out and held his hand. "Then let's keep going together." And as the night stretched on, the stars above shining like whispers of hope, a human and an alien girl stood side by side in a broken world they were slowly fixing one heart at a time.